Amit has 20 plus years of industry experience. In his current role, Amit focuses on architecting on AWS, optimizing AWS environments, and helping customers and partners with cloud adoption, with special focus on Microsoft.NET workloads. Speaker prepared a demo session for .NET developers, architects, development leads who are exploring, building, deploying .NET applications on AWS. Let's start. Amit, the stage is yours.
Thank you. So I just learned how to greet Vitaju. Vitaju, hello. Is that right?
Yeah, Vitayo. That's great.
Vitayo, everyone. Vitayo. So let me quickly make sure you can see me, you can hear me, and you can see my deck.
Yes, we
Are
can.
we good?
No,
Awesome.
we
Thank
can't
you.
see your
Thank you.
deck.
So welcome. What I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly give you a run through of .NET support on AWS. So it'll be a good amount of demos filled with all the tool sets that we have. So let's see here's what I have agenda. Go through AWS Primer, go through AWS tools for .NET developers. And as we talk about .NET, usually there is legacy .NET based applications like .NET Framework based applications, and then the newer .NET Core, .NET 5 based applications. So understanding how do you actually bring those workloads, applications onto AWS? How do you modernize those applications on AWS? We'll touch upon those, and it's not just about like getting your application working, it's also about productionizing. So essentially, how do you do monitoring? How do you do identity tracing? So I want to club a lot of information in this next 40 to 45 minutes. So let's get going, right? First, before tech, it's the business. So you have to have a right clarity on what your business goals are. I work in New York with a lot of financial services. Some may have the needs to grow their revenue streams. Some they want to just have a improved operations and financial efficiency. So the conversation has this kind of typical top level goal, be it revenue, cost, agility, innovation. Having that clarity is super, super important, right? Some customers have digital transformation as their top level goal. Some customers have agility and staff productivity. But getting that top level goal is super important. And that trickles down to the leaf level employee. So AWS at the top level, I have 24 geographical regions, right? Each region is a set of availability zone, right? Okay, so here is a math ratio that I like to see. So basically at the top, you see AWS Cloud is set of regions. Each region is set of availability zones. Each availability zone has 2 or more data centers. So get that clarity of regions, availability zones, and then you have the data center. Perfect. Let's move on here. One key thing is a availability zone is actually, think of it like a metropolitan area, right? So it may have multiple data centers at different locations, and they can be miles apart. They're not like next building. So you could pretty much design a DR and high available applications as a multi-AZ architecture. And by the end of this 40 minutes, you all will be master of all the AWS services. I know, I'm kidding. It's super, super hard. What I like to suggest to the customers is narrow down the list of services based on the application you're working, and just first get that going, right? There's no need to learn all the services. Before anything else, let me just make sure you guys are able to hear me. Okay, all is great, wonderful. Just wanted to make sure. So anything starts with shared responsibility model. What that means is there are 2 keywords, in and off. Security off the cloud is on us. Like think of it like the hypervisor down to the data center, power, cooling, everything is on us. But anything you bring in to the cloud, it's basically your responsibility. We give you tools. So let's say you bring in data to give you, we give you tools to encrypt, decrypt. right? You want to have identity, we give you ability to do federation, OAuth, SAML. So we give you those tool sets, right? Key management, we have a service for the same. But always have this, anything you bring in, that's yours. Anything off the cloud is ours. It's a shared responsibility model. And we give several set of services in the security across different pillars of the application. Okay, I am running through quick just to get people accustomed to AWS if they're not familiar. We have a big AI ML stack. Just to when you modernize your application, you may look for use cases where you can add leverage these services. We have a very detailed data analytics platform. Again, end-to-end ETL, extract, transform, load. You may want to use some kind of data warehouse, do a BI visualization using QuickSight. So we have that end-to-end data analytics services also. And on top of AWS services, we have partners. All the partners are building on top of AWS and enhancing AWS. Okay, so now let's come to the actual topic. Overview of .NET on AWS. You may ask, like, did we start supporting .NET today, yesterday, right? So here is a journey last 12 plus years that we've been on. If you see early 2008, we started with Windows and SQL Server, supported different editions of it, right? 3 to 8 to 12 to 16 to 19, and then moved on to supporting SQL Server, again, different set of editions. Then moved on to supporting .NET and .NET Legacy, .NET Framework, as well as .NET Core, and now .NET 5 across our compute services. And then identity, integrating with Active Directory, tracing, integrating with X-Ray, giving you the CLI, PowerShell native experience for .NET-based manipulations. And we are proud to say that we were the first cloud to be .NET 5 ready. Okay. So what are the tool sets that a typical .NET developer would want, right? Most of the .NET developers are very familiar with Visual Studio. So first, they would want to work inside Visual Studio. Our Visual Studio Code, we have support for Visual Studio Code, and JetBrains Writer. They may want SDK. So there are so many services, Amit. How do you manipulate those services? So basically, do you have an SDK? That's the question that I get asked, right? Somebody mentioned CDK in the previous session. Yes. Do we have a CDK for .NET? Right? And instead of talking all this, you know what? Let's stop the PowerPoint and go to my demo. So let's go in. Okay. Can somebody confirm they can see the screen? Are you guys able to see the screen? Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. Okay, so here is an example of the Visual Studio IDE where I have installed something called AWS Toolkit. So let me go ahead and show you what I'm meaning. Here you go. This is the toolkit. We have it for 2017, 19, and also the previous editions of Visual Studio, right? Once you install the toolkit, you will notice a very neat utility called AWS Explorer. So AWS Explorer, basically you want to see all your AWS services right inside Visual Studio, right? I can see all my buckets inside Visual Studio. If I want to create a new bucket, I can create it. So the idea is a .NET developer, hey, you're focusing on building something. You don't want to hop different places. I mean, usually what happens is people work inside the console, right? This is where you work. I may go to the S3 bucket. Let's just go quickly and see it. And I can see my list of buckets available here. Okay, hopefully things work here quickly. Okay, here you go. The same set of buckets that I saw there, the same set of buckets are available here, right? So the idea is .NET developer working inside Visual Studio, we want you to get that experience to manipulate the services right inside Visual Studio. You may say, Amit, how is it connected, right? As you at the top, you see something called profile. So you can specify a profile. Here you go. And you specify the access key and secret access key. Once you can specify that, it automatically connects. You can have multiple profiles so that if a developer is working on different set of accounts, you can have different profiles and you will connect to that particular profile. I'm assuming folks are aware of the IAM services. But just to quickly show you, in case folks are new here, I quickly go in there and I can go to users. I can say, hey, I want to add a new user. Okay, meetup. Let's just do it. And I will give it access as programmatic access. Okay, permissions, like what permissions this user will have. I can copy it from existing users. I can attach policies. So just for the sake of this demo, I'm gonna choose existing one. And this will define what services, what actions can this particular user do. Once it is created, you will see it actually gives me that information, the access key and secret access key, right? And that's what I use to connect. So we got connected, and then you will say, okay, I got the Visual Studio part. What else do you give? What does the toolkit provide additionally? So if I go to File, New Project, and I can actually choose the platform here. And once I narrow it down to the platform AWS, I can see the starter project templates. So boilerplate codes auto-generated for you. So that helps you with it. What else can we do? I mean, I am inside Visual Studio. What else can I do? So I'll show you a quick website. This is a typical ASP.NET application I created. This is using D3.js, basically visualizations on the client side using JavaScript. So let me quickly, hopefully the demo gods are happy. Here you go. So it just shows you the list of cities and the ticket sales in that particular city. Here you go. Right? I can sort them, filter them. This is completely on the client side. Right? I can choose one of it. Again, client side. I can choose different cities. It filters it. So they are all cross-linked. Right? And the same application I actually published. If I go here, stop it. I can right-click and I can get publish to Elastic Beanstalk. Right from Visual Studio. So basically, for a developer to quickly test how things are working, this is a pretty neat integration for deployment. We integrate with Beanstalk, container services, as well as Lambda. So because for this demo, I already published, so I'm going to go inside the console. No Zoom. Let's go in. And I open the Beanstalk. Okay. Beanstalk is our like a near past like service. So to get started, this is a pretty neat service for web applications and web services. It gives you out of the box health monitoring. It gives you out of the box ability to see all your logs, health, right? So you can track what's happening request wise. It's pretty neat. And to get started for web applications and web services, highly recommend using leveraging Elastic Beanstalk. Some customers may need to go to EC2. I mean, in case you need to have more customizations on the underlying environment, but Beanstalk gets you going pretty fast. Okay, so what else? Let's see the SDK part. So we have SDK. In this case, let me quickly show you a demo of manipulating the same S3 service. Before I do that, I want to show you the NuGet packages that we have. So AWS SDK. And as you can see, for each service, there is a corresponding NuGet package. So think of it like any application you're working, and if you have to manipulate some AWS service, you would go corresponding, take the dependency on the NuGet package for that service. So in this example, what I have done is I have taken dependency on S3. So let's see the S3 code. What am I doing here? Very quick, using. The pattern is amazon.s3, amazon.s3.model. So if you see the pattern, it's amazon.servicename, amazon.servicename.model. So that's a typical pattern. Any service, you can just replace it with that way. EC2, amazon.ec2, amazon.ec2.model, right? So that's how the typical pattern works. You create the client of that service, and then you call. So let's quickly go and do a debugging session with this, right? So go in. It's using the current credentials based on the profile. So whichever is the profile selected, it is using that credentials from that profile. So I create the client, S3 client object. And what would you expect in a simple S3 client, right? It's a scalable object storage. So you will see like copy, move, delete. It's a storage, right? So, and it does show you sync async. So you can call things synchronously, like call and wait, or you can call it asynchronously. So you have a callable async result, and there the callback would come, right? So the both are available. So let's go in, and then I go into the list bucket. So this is one of the function that I'm calling. So basically iterating through the buckets, right? So you have a typed object. Once you get the typed object, you get properties of it, and you iterate through it. So the same thing that we saw, I see the list of buckets here, right? Just to repeat, what I did is basically took the NuGet dependency and imported the corresponding service, Amazon.service name, Amazon.service name.model, created the client of it, and then you have list of calls. Let's take another example. And in this case, I will use a very different service. We have a service called Comprehend. So a Comprehend service, by the way, one quick thing I want to show you. When you call S3, how did it actually do the authorization? So I have a Fiddler installed just to show you the API call that goes to the AWS environment. Let's quickly go in, open this, and I am going to run this example again, just to show you that call, how the API call was made to the AWS environment. Okay, so the Fiddler is opened. Okay, hopefully all the demo gods are happy still, right? And what's a demo if it doesn't fail? So if it fails, it fails. Let's go in and call again. Okay, so let's get in. Thank you, listing bucket. This is the place where I'm calling it. So I call it and it came back. So now I should have seen that call. Here you go. That S3 call was made. Eesh. Okay. Okay, stop it. Let's go in and show you the S3 call. Here you go. If you see, S3 service returns an XML. So SDK does many things. One of it is like the serialization aspect of what goes input and what is returned back. It's abstracted from you. Some of the services may need JSON. Some of the services work with XML. The older ones are XML based. Here, if you see authorization header that was passed, there is a HMAC signature. Remember, access key, secret access key. I mean, access key, there is nothing secret, but secret key is definitely secret. So using the secret key, it generates the HMAC signature, and that is passed as an authorization header to the API. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. And I will show you another example of the SDK now. So stop the demo here. I go to the Comprehend service. So Comprehend is our AI service, one of the AI service, where given a text, it can find out sentiments. So it can find out entities, key phrases, what sentiment it has. So here is one text, which is very, very simple, and there are reviews, and it just says some of the places I visited. There are some of the suggestions are terrible, so there is a sentiment. Let's quickly go in and debug this. So what is the program? Comprehend. Remember the drill? Dependency package. So in this case, what package? I got comprehend. And at the top, I got using amazon.comprehend, amazon.comprehend.model, right? Create the client, call the functions. So that's a typical drill. So let's go ahead and run this. Okay, hopefully the demo gods are happy. I'll just say without you again, hopefully that makes it more happy. So here you go. I'm calling the domain language, entities, and each function I'm using a wait so that it uses the underlying thread pool. And then the output, I am putting it onto the file. So let's continue. And if you see the output, here is the file generated. And as you can see, it was able to detect language as EN. So this is the language, right? It was able to detect entities, 2021 date. It was able to identify key phrases. And then finally, the most important thing, it was able to detect sentiment also, right? So that's another example of using another AWS service in your .NET application. Similarly, recognition, same thing. Recognition.model. Recognition gives you ability to take an image, find out attributes from it, right? So faces or attributes, you can call that, in this case, I'm calling faces. Similarly, there are other sets of services. Hopefully that give you a good run through of toolkit and SDK. Those two things. Toolkit gets you Explorer, the most important thing, so that you can see all your resources. Not just see, by the way, you can do things also here. So I can do a launch instance. I can select an instance and I can actually connect to it, right? So it's not like a dumb. There is good amount of I can stop, start, good amount of functionality exposed right inside Visual Studio. Okay, you saw the starter templates, you saw the publishing, right? We get ability to publish right from Visual Studio. Here you go. I can show you again. Here you go. Publish, right? So those are some of the beauty of it. So let's go back to our slide deck. So we saw Visual Studio. Similarly, we have toolkit for Visual Studio Code as well as JetBrains Rider. One key distinction is Visual Studio Code and JetBrains Rider has more serverless oriented features. Okay, so SDK, we have it for .NET as well as .NET Core. We have a CDK. So if you, I'm not, I don't like templating. I don't want to write CloudFormation templates, right? So I would rather write C# code. So I can use CDK for .NET and generate those CloudFormation templates. We have integration with CLI. The right-click publish that you saw, we also have a .NET CLI equivalent of the same. So many customers, what they do is they actually call the .NET CLI extension in their CI/CD pipeline. Okay. We also integrate with Azure DevOps. We also integrate with many other CI/CD services and partners out there. Okay, so we saw the demo. So quickly running through, you saw the Explorer. You saw getting started templates. You saw the easy deployments, right-click publish, right? Uh, here are the same things in a screenshot fashion. We have toolkit for Visual Studio Code, for Writer, programmatic XDK. One key thing on SDK is a consistent coding pattern. You would see complete consistent coding pattern. As you can see, using service name.model, create the service client, and then do the operation. So each operation may have a request information that it needs, and then it'll respond. So this is consistent. You manipulate one service, you pretty much manipulate all other services. So that's the learning curve is much faster. Yes, the learning is underlying functions, underlying functionalities, underlying methods, what are exposed. That takes some time to understand. The same thing that I showed you demo, in this case, it's calling the S3 client and calling the list object async fashion. Okay, we saw that. We also have the command line, as I said, .NET CLI templates. So you can do create projects, deployment, and integrate inside your CI/CD pipeline. So that was .NET tools. Now let's go across app modernization, right? When I say app modernization, it could be moving across different abstraction tier. So basically, maybe you are first hosting it in VMs, virtual machines, and then slowly you are modernizing the same application to target containers or serverless based, right? So what are the ways in which you go there? We will discuss that. Leveraging and managing cloud-based services wherever applicable, leveraging, enriching your, like if you have a legacy application, you can enhance that legacy application by adding newer use cases. I just showed you an example of using Comprehend. You could use another AWS AI service, like some customers I have seen, some use chatbot and enable actually chatbots inside their applications, right? So integrating voice interfaces. So the modernization could mean many things, but at the bottom, it's the abstraction tier. This is a typical modernization journey of customers. Think of it like an on-prem customer who has web servers, API servers, data tiers. They first get it onto AWS, and here is so what we were here, we moved to here. So we got pretty much EC2 based architecture. I don't think this is where you want to stop. This is maybe you can start here, but you want to continuously modernize yourself. And my rule of thumb is the lesser the operation, the more the focus on innovation. So I would want to go the higher abstraction tier, which is the serverless stack. So let's get rid of that, get the serverless stack as much as possible. In this case, I replaced the API tier with API gateway and Lambda. And I decoupled. So many existing applications were written in a synchronous fashion. You want to just decouple that. Caller gets a response that, hey, we got it. And then once their actual background processing finishes, it notifies that, hey, we did it. So decoupled based architecture are way better, right? For .NET applications, here are the list of services where you can deploy them. So .NET Framework based is EC2, Beanstalk, I showed you a quick demo, which is more PaaS-like, Lightsail, a container service, and Kubernetes, container service or Kubernetes. For .NET Core or .NET 5, pretty much across. Changing from .NET Framework to .NET Core will enable you target Fargate, which is serverless containers, and Lambda, serverless functions. So that's how, and this is basically the key here: level of abstraction and amount of work. Here, I have to manage the underlying VM. I have to manage the patching, updates, and all that. Here, all I have to do is give the function. So you can see the difference between the amount of operations work that you will have to do, right? We actually have a new blueprints published. So let me quickly show you that. So if I open up a new Visual Studio and create a new Lambda function, we recently integrated with .NET 5, and now Lambda actually has I want to create a new project. It's the container support with Lambda, and we have boilerplate templates available for the same too. So here is the Lambda. Okay, so I'm gonna go. Let's do a test. As you can see, here is the boilerplate functions. This is the .NET 5, so Lambda, but it has container image support. Let's generate something to show you like what that boilerplate code is. When I said it generates boilerplate codes. So this one is basically a Lambda function which takes an image, does a recognition call, finds out attributes, right, and updates that information. So once it generates, I can show you quick pieces of the code. Hopefully the demo gods are happy. It is working a little slow today. Okay, so here it got generated. And if I see the function, here is my Lambda function. As you can see, it uses S3, it uses recognition, right? And here is my actual function. Here you go, function handler. And it called the detect label async, right? So it pretty much generated the whole code for you to get started, and you can customize it. Right from Visual Studio, it also gives you ability to deploy. So publish to AWS Lambda. It'll take care of deploying too, right? Go in. So that's the boilerplate toolkit. We have AMI, the Amazon machine image for .NET 5 too. So how do you modernize? Like, what are the tool sets that we provide you? We have many tool sets. I'll quickly highlight some of those. App to container. So if you have a legacy websites, like think of it like ASP.NET web forms, ASP.NET MVC websites inside IIS, and you want to containerize them, app to container is your friend. It can run the app to container on that IIS box. It will auto analyze the list of websites, and it will give you ability to containerize them. And not only ability, you can actually use it to publish it on AWS, right? Porting assistant for .NET, very neat tool if you have legacy .NET framework based application and you want to analyze what it would take to port it to .NET Core, .NET 5, right? So it can give you information about what NuGet packages, dependencies you have, what is the incompatibility, actual source code that you would need to change. We have a couple of additional services in this space to actually enable end-to-end portfolio assessment and doing guided modernization decisions. This is drift service, decomposing existing monolithic-based application into set of microservices. Those are work in progress. .NET Core is where pretty much all the actions are happening, and Microsoft itself is doing .NET Core, .NET 5, but .NET Framework is still supported, so both have a place. Using Porting Assistant, you can do analysis of the application. It gives you dependency mapping. I mean, trust me, many of the customers I've gone through, some customers don't even know their own solution, like what is dependent on what. So running Porting Assistant actually will help you understand your application details. Right here, you can see it can show you compatibility, incompatible reports too. Right. App to container, again, run it on your IIS boxes. It will auto crawl, find out all the websites, and give you a ability to deploy them on AWS ACS containers. This is one rudimentary flowchart analysis, like how we start discussions. There are three typical patterns: rehost, replatform, refactor. I mean, there are other like repurchase, retire, relocate. There are different set of R's, but at the top layer, rehost, replatform, and refactor. Typically, we start with like hosting, in that case, EC2 and Beanstalk. Replatforming, usually you target containers. If it is a .NET Framework-based application, then it's Windows containers. And if it is .NET Core, then you have Linux containers. Refactoring, if it is targeting .NET Core, .NET 5, then you go towards Lambda, step functions, and others, right? When you are modernizing the application, it's not just about taking the existing application and mapping it to the right compute services. It is also about, can you change the existing application? Maybe you are using a session state. You can target Redis Elasticache for the same. Very simple, like using configuration. We have many providers. So all you do is in your session state, you specify the Redis session state provider. You don't have to change any code. That's one example of it, right? Okay, so that's modernization for you. Along with that comes the tracing. So you can use AWS X-Ray for tracing, and this is very useful if you have application that is known for some trouble, like performance issues. You don't know where the time is being spent in a thread. Like let's say if you have a web tier, service tier, another service tier, and data tier, and how the request flows. X-Ray can help you. It creates something called correlation ID, and using the correlation ID, you'll be able to actually map and narrow down to how much time is being spent in each layer. Very, very useful. It can track all the HTTP calls to the web APIs, AWS services, and give you the report, right? Here is a service map of it. It captures, stores it in AWS. You can see the service map to understand more. You can drill down, dive deep. You can actually annotate piece of a set of code, and so it is a separate segment in itself also. Another utility, application insights for .NET and SQL Server. I mean, obviously, once you have productionized it, you want to know how actually I can see what's happening in my applications, right? There are so many application components. You can get this dashboard insights and create alarms that will notify you, right? Very useful app insights. So next is development environment. I mean, we discussed Visual Studio, but does AWS have only Visual Studio? No, we have it for IntelliJ, PyCharm, Eclipse, VSTS, and we have many other languages supported for other than .NET too, right? But we have our own code suite services, code build, code commit, code deploy, code pipeline. One beauty of it is like you don't have to use AWS code suite service. You can plug and play. Like you can keep your source code in GitHub. You can use Jenkins as a build server. You can use a code pipeline to do orchestration. Let me quickly show you what I mean here. So I go here. Let's go into code pipeline. Okay. Okay, I can see the pipeline. And these are different stages, right? So, hey, get me the code from GitHub, do the build, do the deploy. You can always modify and add new stages. Like some finservs, they say, Amit, we just need to make sure something manually. So I call that as a make sure stage, just for the sake of it, right? And you can add action groups in make sure stage, right? Make sure action. And there are different action providers. This list is limited, but it can grow. As you can see, manual approver, code build, Jenkins, and many others are available here. So you can add those different actions. And pipeline is the one that does the whole orchestration. Get the code, do the build, run the test, do the deployment, right? You don't have to use all AWS services. You can integrate with your CI/CD pipeline too. Okay. So we pretty much integrate with most of the well-known CI/CD partners. Machine learning, we discussed. You can always enhance your, so there are 3 layers here. At the top layer is where the .NET developers are more interested, because give me a pre-trained model and tell me the API that I can call, right? So that's perfect for AI. I showed you ability to call comprehend. You can see and leverage your in your applications. Here is an example of translate client. Again, the drill is same. Translate.model, create the client, put the input, get the response, right? So that was my run through of quick .NET on AWS. And this is some good resources. You definitely want to bookmark aws.amazon.com/net, because that's our homepage. You want to connect with us on Twitter. You want to look at the white papers that we publish. and that should get you started. Happy to take questions, if any.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. We got plenty of questions actually. So let's start from you deployed an application like BI dashboards for Redshift. Is it better to use AWS QuickSight for dashboards instead of developing a custom application?
Very, very good point. And not just QuickSight. There is Tableau. There are other set of visualization softwares out there. I'm a developer and I like to explore different engines. And this was a new engine, the JavaScript engine. And D3 has a good visualization capabilities that you could do on the client side. Hence, I used it. You do not have to. I mean, obviously, you can embed a quick site dashboard inside your .NET application, right? That's a perfect use case. I don't want to come across like a sales guy who's putting all AWS services. I like to explore different components. So definitely explore quick sites and integrate them. It has a pretty neat spicing engine and it can do good amount of BI capabilities.
Great. Thank you. Thanks. Um, the other question is how often AWS updates AI algorithms for comprehend recognition? What is better, use predefined AWS AI services or create own, like models
Ah,
with SageMaker?
That's a very good question. So as I said, when I was showing the ML slide, there are three types of AI ML developers. One is basically who wants to have complete control to underlying infrastructure. They may want to create their own model, run it, and train it against different set of data. Right, so that's fair, and we have services for them too. SageMaker is studio is getting a lot of attraction by using Jupyter notebooks. We have support for all the ML platforms out there. I used the AI services. Basically, typically the .NET developer I meet, the enterprise .NET developer, they have ton of work on the enterprise side, so they don't get the time to actually do that whole build, train, model like a different set of data. Now, the frequency with which the changes happen in comprehend recognition, I think if you connect to AWS, what's new? Usually, you get to know what's changing. You won't believe, like my homepage on the browser is AWS What's New because I don't know what changed last night, and the speed with which things happen here, it's really hard to be on top of it. So at this moment, I really don't know what's the frequency with which it's being updated, but I can take that look at it and come back with a response.
I can imagine that with such speed of new features developed, it's quite hard to be developer advocate.
Yeah, you got
Uh,
it. I mean, I now feel like I say I don't know what I don't know, so I am not the person who knows everything. Give me your use case and I can help you, and I also learn along with you because I learn a lot while doing these sessions.
Great, thank you. There is one question which is quite wide, but if you can share some materials, and this question is, can you share the best practices of making application for AWS using .NET? Is it any resource or something?
Oh, actually a very good question. We do have something called well architected principles, and we have white paper on well architected. It's kind of generic, .NET oriented, but actually a lot of the it is basically a set of best practices across 5 different pillars: resiliency, security, operations, availability, and you can actually read through those guidelines and you can actually incorporate them into your .NET based applications. But I take that feedback. I think I'll probably see if we can have a specific .NET oriented, well architected guidelines. So for now, start with that. Join our Twitter and our Twitter handle, and be on top of it. Like we are responding in forums also, so feel free. And if you have AWS account team working with you, give the feedback to your solutions architect, account manager, technical account manager, and that goes into a product feature request. We gather those and we drive the service team to improve it.
Great, thank you. There's an interesting question, Amit. What is your favorite AWS service? Maybe some secret tool you enjoyed using the most of the solved a tech business problem magically.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's another good one. I love config. I know some people may not like that much. It's operations used more. Config and config rules. Now I'll tell you why I love it. Because I mean, in databases, there is something called triggers, right? Where you can actually hook into, and DML operations, you can actually capture and say, yes, no, you want to have it or not. Similarly, every AWS resource, the change of it gets captured via config. So there is a config item that gets created. And any change, there's a new version of config item. You can actually write config rules against it and allow deny it. I'll give you a use case. Let's say an enterprise decides that all developers, thou shall not be able to create R4 8x large some EC2 instance. You can actually code that because it's basically on EC2 instance create ECO config rules that gets called, checks whether the current person has the permission to do that and does not allow it. So basically, you can do proactive governance, do proactive cost, do a lot of different use cases enable that because you are right there when the change is happening. You can do what you want because and you have the context of what the change is. So config and config rules are very useful services to me.
Great. Oh yeah, like AWS is very rich on configuration. That's true. So the question about your slides. Are all services from the slides for .NET Core available in all regions, or they got some limited availability?
So there is information on it, like for each services. Like mostly we try to keep in sync, but obviously for newer services, there are some regions where we get them, learn from it, and then slowly get them into a different set of regions. But if you have a specific service and a specific region that you would want, reach out. I would be happy to take that to service team and get back to you on the timeline for it, if in case it's not available there.
Oh, thanks. Appreciating your help here. And the interesting question, like, why it is called Amazon Recognition with letter K and not Amazon Recognition as it should be, like, grammatically?
That's again a good question, man. There's a little bit of peculiarity at AWS. So like when I joined, it's like Route 53 versus DNS. There are like different lingos. Maybe it's part of it. Maybe the naming team has some rules. So I really don't know what was the underlying reason why they put that.
And I actually really like this recognition through the K because, it catches attention.
Yeah.
Okay, and my favorite question for folks from Amazon, like, what do you think the key benefits of AWS Lambdas versus Azure Functions?
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, what I will do is I'll try to be on Lambda and not make it like a compete kind of discussion. And it all depends on use case. Maybe Azure Function is right for your use case. I don't say that that's wrong. So I say I love Lambda because one, I don't have to do any operations. That's one of the big advantage. Second, when I started learning in EC2, I had to learn auto scaling policies, launch configurations, right, alarming, and CloudWatch. There's like a little bit of like networking, subnet groups, and security groups. And as a developer, like give me the endpoint. I want to call that endpoint. Right? That's what I like. So Lambda makes me enables that to me. I should say that. I mean, EC2 has its own place, container has its own place, and serverless has its own place. Like if you have an application that gets 24/7 request, in that case, I mean, Lambda can get costly, right? So you want to do your analysis in terms of really, you may have application that's running long, right? And Lambda is basically meant for short, quick calls, call and come back, kind of use case. So containers have its own place. EC2 has its own place. If you get a legacy, and I come across many customers like, oh, I need to deploy this custom tool, manipulate this registry, and all kinds of things. I mean, go EC2. I mean, that's where you can do all that. Lambda does not give you access to the underlying. It's actually underlying Linux cluster, right? It does not give you access to that. You don't have any access to the same. So if you are willing to forego that right, and if you are willing to just focus on your application, build your application as microservices, because I mean smaller microservices based set of applications are more scalable, innovate faster, right? I mean, it enables that. So let's say API Gateway or MuleSoft or Apigee, whatever is your front service tier, the backend is Lambda. Some customers, they start with EC2 as backend and slowly modernize towards container and slowly move towards serverless. So it's kind of a journey that you have to take and appreciate. Uh, any new development, I would any day prefer serverless stack. And with Lambda, with containers image support, it defeats the argument of like, hey, I'm getting logged in and that kind of thing, right? I mean, there's nothing, you can always move the containers anywhere. And even in the previous editions of Lambda, some people, what they did was they actually implemented Lambda function as a wrapper to their libraries. So their libraries were separate, right? So you still get portability of it. So it's a win-win for net new development. Microservices oriented architecture supports it. Lot of underpinning, or we call it undifferentiated heavy lifting work, I don't have to do. Hopefully that convinces.
Yeah, that's answer. So, Amit, we have actually a small prize for the question which was your favorite. So, um, what question you liked most of all?
What's my coolest service? What is the coolest service that I like?
Oh,
I mean, that's the first one I got asked.
great. So the person who asked the question about the coolest service, please contact with the organizers. They will send you the bonus. Thank you, Amit, for your presentation. That was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Dima. Thanks the whole team. You guys have helped me with this. This was a new experiment, so I learned a lot. Look forward to doing more of these. Thank you. Have a good day.